Picture this: 70,000 years ago, our entire species, every human alive, could have fit inside a modern football stadium, not scattered across continents, not thriving in diverse communities. We're talking about somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 individuals, the sole survivors of a catastrophe so profound it nearly erased humanity from Earth's story. You wouldn't know it by looking around today. 8 billion people occupy every corner of this planet, from steaming jungles to frozen tundra, but hidden in your DNA, in mine, in everyone's, lies the genetic signature of that ancient near extinction, a bottleneck so severe that humans today are more genetically similar to each other than chimpanzees living in neighboring forests. How does an entire species come that close to oblivion? The year is 74,000 BCE. Early humans have already spread beyond Africa, reaching into parts of Asia and possibly Europe. They're not primitive, not by any stretch. These are people with sophisticated stone tools, capable of abstract thought, artistic expression. They control fire, they hunt cooperatively, they care for their sick and elderly. Small bands move across landscapes we'd barely recognize, places where ice sheets stretch across what will one day be London and New York. And then, on an island in what we now call Indonesia, the earth begins to tremble. Mount Toba isn't just any volcano, it's a supervolcano, a geological monster that's been building pressure for hundreds of thousands of years. When it finally erupts, the explosion releases energy equivalent to 1 million Hiroshima bombs, not spread over years, in a matter of days. The sound alone would have traveled thousands of miles. Imagine standing in prehistoric India and hearing what sounds like the sky itself splitting apart. Within hours, volcanic ash begins to fall, not the light dusting you might see from a distant eruption today, but a suffocating blanket that buries entire regions under 15 to 20 feet of gray death. But that's just the beginning. The ash doesn't stop at Indonesia. It doesn't even stop at Asia. Within weeks, 2,800 cubic kilometers of rock and ash have been blasted into the stratosphere, enough material to cover the entire United States with a layer 5 inches deep. Prevailing winds carry this debris around the globe, and as it settles, something terrifying happens. The sky darkens, not the gentle dimming of a cloudy day. We're talking about a volcanic winter that drops global temperatures by an estimated 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. That might not sound catastrophic, but remember, this is already an ice age. Many regions are hovering just above uninhabitable. This volcanic winter pushes them over the edge. For early humans scattered across Africa and southern Asia, food sources begin to collapse. The plants that sustained large herbivores wither under reduced sunlight. Animals that humans depend on for survival, they starve, they migrate, they disappear. Water sources dry up or become contaminated with volcanic fallout, and the humans themselves, they die. Not dramatically in most cases, no Hollywood explosions, just the quiet, grinding horror of starvation, of watching children go hungry, of entire bands disappearing in the span of a single harsh season. Archaeological evidence from this period, it's hauntingly sparse. The human presence on Earth, it's barely a whisper. Genetic studies paint an even more chilling picture. When scientists analyze human mitochondrial DNA, the genetic material passed down through mothers, they find something extraordinary, a dramatic reduction in genetic diversity that points to a severe population crash right around 70,000 years ago. The numbers vary depending on the model, but conservative estimates suggest humanity was reduced to perhaps 10,000 individuals. More radical interpretations, as few as 1,000 breeding pairs. Let that sink in for a moment. 1,000 individuals scattered across multiple continents, each group isolated, vulnerable, clinging to survival in whatever pocket of habitability they could find. Where did they survive? That's one of the great detective stories of paleoanthropology. The evidence points to equatorial Africa, regions where even under volcanic winter conditions, temperatures remained just barely survivable. Coastal areas too, where marine resources provided a buffer against collapsing terrestrial ecosystems. Shellfish don't disappear when plants die. Fish don't care if there's ash in the atmosphere. Archaeological sites in South Africa show continuous human occupation through this period. Cave sites, places like Pinnacle Point and Blombos Cave, they tell stories of populations that weathered the storm. These weren't thriving communities. The artifacts suggest small groups, careful resource management, high stress. But they survived. In Asia, the picture is murkier. Some researchers argue that the small populations persisted in India and Southeast Asia, Refugia, where geography created microclimates slightly more favorable. Others suggest those populations went extinct entirely, with Africa being the sole reservoir of human survival. The debate continues. But what's clear is that humanity's geographic range collapsed dramatically. For perhaps 1,000 years, maybe more, humans existed in this precarious state, generation after generation, born into a world of ash-stained skies and diminished resources. Children who never knew the world as it was before. Elders who carried memories of better times, wondering if those days would ever return, and slowly, painfully slowly, the earth began to heal. The ash is settled. Rains washed it into rivers and oceans. Plants, remarkably resilient, began reclaiming landscapes. Animals followed, repopulating from their own survival pockets. And the humans who remained? They didn't just survive, they adapted. Here's where the story becomes truly fascinating. That genetic bottleneck, that near extinction event, it fundamentally shaped who we are today. When you squeeze an entire species through such a narrow population filter, certain genetic traits become fixed. Variations that might have persisted in a larger population simply disappear. This is why humans are so genetically uniform compared to other species. Chimpanzees, despite having much smaller total populations than humans today, show far greater genetic diversity. They never went through a bottleneck like ours. That diversity, we lost it 70,000 years ago. In some ways, we're still living in the shadow of that loss. But there's a flip side. Some researchers argue that the bottleneck created selection pressure that accelerated cognitive evolution. Small populations facing extreme environmental stress, they reward behavioral flexibility, creative problem solving, social cooperation. The humans who survived Toba weren't necessarily the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who could think their way through impossible situations. Is it coincidence that complex symbolic behavior, sophisticated language, advanced tool technologies all seem to emerge in the archaeological record shortly after the Toba eruption? Maybe, maybe not. What we know is that the humans who eventually spread out from their survival refugia, they were different from those who came before, more innovative, more adaptable, more human in the ways we recognize today. By 60,000 years ago, human populations were growing again. Small bands ventured out from their refugia, following coastlines, tracking game into territories left empty by the extinction of earlier populations. Within 20,000 years, humans had reached Australia, a journey requiring sophisticated seafaring and navigation. By 40,000 years ago, we were in Europe, displacing Neanderthals. By 15,000 years ago, we'd crossed into the Americas. This wasn't just expansion, it was explosion. From that tiny bottleneck population to every habitable continent in less than 60,000 years. We'd gone from the brink of extinction to undisputed dominance of Earth's terrestrial environments, and we've never looked back. Today, when you look at the incredible diversity of human cultures, the thousands of languages, the multitude of physical appearances, the complexity of our civilizations, it's almost impossible to believe we all trace back to that tiny population. But the evidence is there, written in our genes, telling a story of a survival against almost impossible odds. Every person alive today, every single one of us, we're descendants of those survivors, the ones who found the right cave, the ones who learned to eat shellfish when game disappeared, the ones who kept their families alive through volcanic winters and the starvation. Their resilience is our inheritance. The Toba hypothesis remains debated in scientific circles. Some researchers argue the bottleneck was less severe, or occurred over a longer time frame, or had multiple causes beyond the single volcanic event. Fair criticisms. Science thrives on skepticism. But what's undeniable is that something happened around 70,000 years ago that dramatically reduced human genetic diversity. Whether it was Toba alone, or Toba combined with ice age conditions and other environmental stresses, the result was the same. Humanity stood at the edge of the abyss and somehow, miraculously, stepped back. That genetic bottleneck isn't ancient history. It's recent enough that its effects still ripple through our species. It's why genetic diseases can spread so widely in human populations. We simply don't have the diversity to resist them the way other species might. It's why humans can receive organ transplants from genetically unrelated individuals with reasonable success rates. It's why a person from Norway and a person from Nigeria are more genetically similar than two gorillas from the same forest. We are, all of us, cousins in a very real sense. Separated by perhaps 2,000 generations, nothing in evolutionary time. The person sitting next to you on the bus almost certainly shares ancestors with you from that bottleneck population. We're all survivors' children, and perhaps that's the real story here. Not the catastrophe itself, but what came after. The determination, the ingenuity, the sheer stubborn refusal to disappear that characterizes our species. 70,000 years ago, we were given every reason to go extinct. The planet itself seemed to be trying to erase us. We're still here, 8 billion strong, facing new challenges, certainly climate change, resource depletion, conflicts both old and new. But we carry in our genes the memory of an ancient survival, a reminder that humans, when pushed to the edge, have a remarkable capacity to endure. The next time you look up at the sky, remember that it was once filled with ash so thick that our ancestors wondered if the sun would ever return. It did. They survived. And here we stand, inheritors of their legacy, writing the next chapters in a story that almost ended before it truly began.